Tez, my DJ skills are a little fail today, so
I was enjoying it.
we may come back to that jam, everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's Stacey Staaterman, and I'm here with another Level Up Leadership discussion. Of course, this is intended to help us all get focused on renewing, pivoting, thriving in 2021. We've had a crazy time of it. No, everybody knows that. We've said it hundreds of times, and I keep coming back to something that's been a source of inspiration for me for years. The future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. And it's like one of those obvious, not obvious things. But it has led me now to contemplate and discuss and have experts in my midst come to the table to discuss what leveling up means these days as it pertains to really how we lead ourselves in all facets of life. So I'm excited to introduce everyone here to Tez Roro, who is a real estate professional with Keller Williams. She's my neighbor. She's a friend. She's a very powerful person in my community. I think that's fair to say. I think that's very fair to say. I don't know if that's a hat you feel like wearing, but high impact. High impact is your middle name, Tez. And you, I mean, we had to edit this. I had to edit this down. There were so many things that I wanted to note about you so that people could get to know you. So I'm really excited that you're here and could come on and share some of your words of wisdom.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So in advance, of course, I've asked all my guests about a quote or some source of inspiration relative to how they lead themselves and how they lead in general. And you shared this quote from John Lewis: "Make good necessary trouble." So why is this one so important to you?
So this resonates with me a lot because I find that in the spaces that I'm in. So you mentioned I have a lot on my plate, right? So I have
Yes, you do.
my family. I serve on boards of the Chamber of Commerce, the PTA, and all these different things within the real estate industry as well. And I find that we can even talk about speakers, right? Like diversity of speakers when we're planning events, and the names that I may be hearing may be all male or not diverse in other ways. And so I'm usually the one asking that uncomfortable question of, hey, have we had women before? And there's been meetings where there was like a minute of silence, like people had to really think about if we've had women before or diverse women, right? And so I feel like I'm the one that asks those tough questions, right? Addresses that elephant in the room. But also, if there's something that needs to be done, if I see a gap, right, I go and fill it. And that means sometimes having courageous conversations, having
Mhm.
uncomfortable conversations, challenging people's thoughts and beliefs and behaviors, right? So that's why, that quote resonates with me a lot.
So it's interesting because this requires you to be, I imagine, a little comfortable with uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think, I will say that I've exited the corporate career some years ago, but I think that experience, that part of my career has prepared me well and has prepared me even in my personal life, right? Like
Mm.
with our relationships, we have to have those tough conversations. And I've gotten quite comfortable having that tough conversation. And I think that at the core, if you approach people with a level of respect and a level of dignity, and that there's this common core we all want to work on, I find that people do want to work on it. They just may not have the skills or the words,
Mm.
the emotional intelligence to work through it, right? And so if you're speaking in a language that is rooted in respect, but also honesty, right? We are going to talk about these tough things. Usually I find that on the other side, there's just such breakthrough, right? For
Mm.
everyone involved. And so, yeah, it's tough. It's not easy, but it has to be done and someone has to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. And I've been in some of those meetings where you've asked some of those tough questions, and I am struck by the way that you bring respect and grace and kindness uh, into into the moment to sort of change the energy a little bit. So the idea of necessary trouble, that seems like a real key part of that quote.
Yeah, because if you think about it, Stacey, if I ask someone a question in a way that is not respectful, if I'm trying to kind of put myself look good or whatever, it's only going to put the other person in defense, right? In a defensive mode. That's not the purpose here, right? The purpose is to get to work, to get work done, and it has to be done in a way the person feels good about doing it. And in parallel to having these tough conversations, is even if there's nothing wrong or nothing to work on, I'm very intentional. I would say if there's a word like that captures me, it'll be intention, right?
Yeah.
I'm very intentional when I do see good work happening. I don't let an opportunity go by without complimenting, mentioning something to someone, because we all wake up every day looking for a sense of purpose, a sense of validity of what we're doing, right? And so I always say, I appreciate you taking time and working on this, and this is great work, right? And so it's not just a tough moments. I think when we experience some good moments, it's easy to just let it be, right, and
Mhm.
not highlight that moment. So yeah, I think balancing it out.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned a little few minutes ago about exiting corporate life and now working in a more independent way. I'm curious how some of this intentionality really informed that decision. And I'm curious what the connection is, maybe also with this idea of leveling up. So that's a big packed
It
question.
is a big
So
question.
what share some thoughts.
So I'll first say that hopefully this will be good news to a lot of our viewers. I am an introvert, believe it or not, and then B, a risk averse person. So put two of them together and you figure out how the heck someone like that could resign from a whole corporate career, right? Like when I
Wow.
was in corporate and I hear people quit or they resign, I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around like what does that mean? How do you make a decision like that? And I had just had my second child, by the way, when I did that, right?
Wow.
So this was a 5 year in the making plan for me, right? So that's what it took for me is there was a seed planted when there's typically for me, I think when there's value misalignment, I listen to that.
Hmm.
And now I may not be in a position to do anything about it just yet, but it's there. I can't ignore it, right? And so for me, showing up as a present and engaged parent is one of my high, values, right? Being a great professional is another one, and so they do have to go together. I think for me, in corporate, it served its purpose really well. I say I grew up in corporate because I actually joined when I was in college and earned my MBA there, which my company paid for, went through the ranks and all. When I became a parent, that's when I felt a shift that perhaps the way I wanted to show up at work and the way I wanted to progress and the way I wanted to show up as a parent didn't quite fit. And I will say it, this is one of the tough conversations we have to have. In the US, in America, I do believe we have misaligned values that don't honor family values, right? So I could have been, a successful career professional if there were realistic expectations about what that meant for a working parent to show up, right? And that just wasn't true for me, and so I had to make a choice. Now, for me, that choice meant being intentional, like you said, about what's important to me. And I also knew that I was licensed even as a full time. So I had two careers at one point, right? I had a full time corporate career, and then I was a licensed professional real estate agent for about 2.5 years. Because what I knew was you could be good at something, but you may not enjoy it. Right. So
Mm.
I've had
Really
assignments in corporate that I was good at that I was kept given, but I didn't like them. I outgrew them, right? And so I needed to make sure that. So that's the risk averse part of me. For me, what made it true, what made it comfortable to jump ship is I practiced it as a dual career for about 2.5 years, kind of built my systems and processes and got a lot of the learning curve out of the way so that when I jumped ship, literally day one, I already had clients that I was working on, right? So this is also a note, if you're working with anyone, for those who are listening, thinking about, and I'm sure the pandemic has been such a transformative
Yeah.
experience for a lot of us in many ways, personally, professionally. Um, this is sort of what it took from me. So a lot of intention. I did work with a life and career coach to help me transition out of that because I had different career paths in mind and I didn't know which one would fit. And I needed someone else to ask me the tough questions, right? To
Yeah.
help me
Yeah.
clarify my thoughts. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it took.
Yeah. Lots of things I could dig into around that answer. And I think the one of the maybe most important things with wide-reaching impact is this, observation that corporate doesn't always do a great job of help, aligning values and providing a place for people to be humans. I think that's probably a fair way to say it. And I think this is maybe one of the blessings of the pandemic is more companies kind of taking another look at, how can we support people as not just our employees, but the whole people that they are, which is exciting. I think it'll still. I don't think anyone's really come up with a perfect answer, but I do. I think more and more people had those conversations with themselves. I mean, I had a similar conversation with myself, eventually also needing to work with a coach to put some structure around the process of figuring out an exit. But, when a coach asked me to write down, what were my life intentions, I was like, what's that got to do with my career? Initially, I just really didn't understand the connection. And then it was sort of obvious, not obvious after that, of course, like, yeah, why wouldn't I want my career to support the life I want to have?
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear more and more people asking those questions. But it is, the sort of taking action on that. The outside perspective I also found was incredibly valuable. My coach now says you can't see the spinach in your own teeth,
Yeah.
and it's it's so true. Very
I
true.
always say, so one of the the taglines you have for me is coach. I feel like I'm like a great listener and I do a great job of helping other people clarify their thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Like make sense out of them, label them, and kind of help them come up with a way forward. I'm a planner, I'm an analyzer. Sometimes I get analysis paralysis. That's why I
Yeah,
need someone else to do it for me, right? And so when you're good at something, it doesn't mean you're good at doing that for yourself always.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, 100%. It's very a lot of that. I'm laughing inside quite quite robustly because a lot of that resonates with me. One of the things that I highlighted about you in my little introduction was the connector that you are. And for those who are watching, I mean, Tez and I met through Facebook. I mean, I was an observer. I could see the impact that you were having. I was curious. I thought, this is a super smart person that I want to get to know. And um, and I hear similar things from others that I meet that know you. So I'm kind of curious what you think about this comment from Kelly Hoey. Of course, Kelly's written one of the best sort of modern day networking books. And she says it's not who you know, it's who knows what you know. And I'm kind of curious because a lot of our connecting these days is happening through platforms, and we do all have a platform in a way that didn't even exist before to tell our story, to lead, even when we don't even know sometimes who we're leading.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to this notion?
So quality will always matter,
Hmm.
right? So you can have a certain, stature, status in life in the social media world or in real life. But I think talent and quality, that's something you cannot ignore. When you experience someone speak or when you're in someone's presence, you will feel that thing, even in the virtual space, right? Like some of the stuff that you may see people come out with. And so, like yesterday, I can give you an example. I attended sort of like a virtual summit and there was someone speaking about entrepreneurship and business and stuff. I've never heard of this person, right? So she mentioned she had multi-million-dollar business and all this stuff, and some of the things she was speaking, I'm like, okay, she knows her stuff. Like this is stuff that I've studied, and I can see maybe like seeking her services. I looked her up on social media. She has like a few hundred followers, right? And so this is what I mean by sometimes people have such elevated status in some of the almost artificial metrics that we put.
Hmm.
But then I think when you experience someone give talk, their talent, and sometimes it may not even be something they sell. A lot of probably what you experienced, what you saw of me, probably had nothing to do with real estate, for example,
No,
right?
nothing at all. Yeah.
With community and building and connecting. And so I think that's how I interpret that quote. And for me, I've learned that I am just I feel like I have like this mental Rolodex in my head. That's kind of what I call it. So when I meet people, I'm taking inventory of what they need, how they want to be supported, who they want to get introduced to. I now add you to my mental Rolodex. The next time I hear something or someone, I'm connecting you. And I think that intentionality piece is some people often have the connections and the people who know, they know who needs what, and by the way, who has that thing. They just don't go one step further and be intentional about making that connection. And I think for me, it's just that, like, I'm always intentional about, there's just, I don't know, this pure joy like that comes out of connecting people, and they make magic happen. And by the way, I don't have to have any part in that, right? Like the joy doesn't come with me getting credit for it or anything like that. It's just, let me connect y'all, and like you make magic happen. Like it just does something for me inside.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I get a lot of that same little, I don't know, dopamine hit or something when I see that two people have gotten value out of knowing each other, and that I've been a conduit to that connection. And
Right.
it's interesting because I'm sure you go to a lot of networking groups. Some work some way, some work the other ways. And one of the things that I think holds people back in some of those networking groups is to be so too quick to judge the impact that somebody could have in my life or in another person's life.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not in the same business, or their business is too different than mine, or we're from a totally different sphere of whatever.
Yeah.
And I find that that really holds people back in terms of creating value, service, which will which will undoubtedly come back to I believe it comes back to when you serve and you help others, even though you may not you may not be clear exactly how it's going to be supportive. It will be supportive probably to you, but your community or something else that you just haven't been able to anticipate.
And I think you nailed it, Stacey. So that, right? Like we're giving without keeping scores.
Yeah,
I don't remember what I did what for. And so the beauty in that is when it does come back, because you're not expecting it, because you're not keeping scores, it's so joyful. It's like this person will send you, a referral, or this person will just send you, like, honestly, a nice note. And isn't don't those come like on days that we really need them?
yeah,
Like the person you introduced me to, we ended up meeting up. I have friends even who I introduced to, and I see them on Facebook kicking it, and it makes me feel good. Like it actually makes me feel like I'm a good friend, even though I'm not spending as much time with them, because I made a connection, right? That is valuable to them. So yeah, give without keeping scores.
yeah. I love that. And I feel like this is a perfect tee up to this other quote that I've highlighted with a few people in different interviews. Scott Galloway talks about this being an incredible opportunity time. He actually calls it a cosmic opportunity moment in one of his blog pieces. And Paula, part of his perspective is, and I agree with him, which is why I highlighted that it's also a time to repair and restore. And I'm curious if what your perspective is on this time and how you might look at this situation we're in.
It's interesting this came up because I was just having this conversation yesterday with my husband over coffee, and like when things are unknown, especially for those of us who like to plan, right, and think and strategize, it's uncomfortable, right, not to know what's happening. We all thought school was going to be closed for 2 weeks and we're going to go back, and yet we ended up teaching our kids, for a year and a half or whatever. And so I think what I've learned is it's okay to plan, and it's okay to see the fruits of your plan, but it's also okay to just be in the moment. And the thing about this is, as much as it's devastating, it's also sort of magical in a way, because it's a universal experience.
Yeah,
Everyone's experiencing it at the same time. So yes, one of the great things that came out of this is I'm an advocate of work-life harmony and allowing people to show up as their authentic full selves. That is when you're going to get production and quality work out of people, right? Not when you force them to show up as this, robotic employee who doesn't have families, and then at home, this, family person who doesn't have work. And so I think one of the things that came out of that, people and companies are forced to think about what it means to have working families. I mean, that's right.
yeah,
And create creative solutions. For me personally, Stacey, it actually has served as quite a restorative and transformative time, even in my relationships, right? Like my personal relationships that I wanted to work on with my kids, really getting to know them. My older one is in elementary school. My little one is still in daycare. My older one doesn't need much help with school, which is fine, but it also means I don't really get to know what he works on because he doesn't
Mhm.
need much help, right? If that makes
Mhm.
sense. Here,
Sure.
I'm forced to know, what class he's taking and what assignments and stuff like that, and really design and implement systems and process and value systems that I've been wanting to for a while. And really getting to know them and even work on some of like emotional intelligence skill sets with them because now I have the time. And so, yeah, I think, in some aspects, even business, I think I got to work on my business more so than in it, right? So,
Mhm.
meaning I got to finally lay down processes and tools and systems. So, when you interact with me, it feels like you're interacting with a business as opposed to an individual, more so than, say, focus on production, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
no,
so,
100%.
yeah, so I would say this is kind of like my reaction to it.
Yeah, and it's it is probably undoubtedly unique for every single person. I think it's just um, there's also like this layer to it, which is the word attaching opportunity to the experience of a pandemic. It can be a challenging thing for people, but on the other hand, it's sort of the only way to cope with, and get through and find the post traumatic growth opportunity out of this post traumatic, highly stressful situation. So, very, very interesting. And I think we're going to see, I mean, we're already seeing this. One of the projects I know that you've been working on in our community is about the expansion of support for young children. So I'm kind of curious, tell us a little bit about the project, and did this period of time help that, make that easier, or create more challenge in getting it done?
So I'm like very excited about that. That's one of like the projects I've worked on for some time now. So pre-K expansion, right? So New York folks are probably like, y'all don't have pre-K, right? In Jersey, we don't have universal pre-K, right? So kindergarten start as public school system starts at kindergarten. Some districts may have it, and so I went to a seminar a couple years ago where I learned that our town was on the list of qualified districts to get aid from the state, but we haven't tapped into that. So that
Interesting.
absolutely, right, like raise the question. And this again, intention, it keeps coming up. You see, I could have just came back and said, well, I heard this, right? But I
Yeah.
said, why, like, why are we not taking advantage of that? And so I spoke to board of education members at a time, and initially it was a no, we don't have space and we can't do it and this and that, and this came up before. And then, I connected with people who presented the information, advocates, Department of Education, all this good stuff. And I gathered and mobilized a force of parents who are interested in bringing pre-K to our town. And I just held an interest meeting. Here's what I know. I don't know everything, but here's what I know. Based on what I know, I feel like it could be doable with some creative solutions. Um, and then we pulled in experts, right, from the community, from advocates outside. So so the short story is that the district now has resources allocated and they're working on it. We're going to apply for the first time, and the hope is that we may actually have some classrooms, some pre-K classrooms, this as early as this September, October. If that
Wow.
happens, Stacey, I think I've made my mark
That's
in
incredible.
this volunteer world.
That's incredible. And I love that this happened during a time
Pandemic.
when so many people were saying, "Oh, we've got to be conservative in what we're doing, and just keep the wheels on the bus." And it's like, no, no, you said no, let's add, let's build a bigger bus, which is so incredible.
I will give the district and the superintendent credit for they have. I would not want any educator's job at this time right now. I think they have
Yeah.
it the hardest, maybe next to healthcare, right? But I will say that this is the thing about leadership too, right? Like, sometimes when you attend Board of Education meetings or even in the social media pages, you hear people complaining about taxes. I pay too much taxes for this, for that. And for me, that's not a solution. That's just a complaint. It's a statement, right? We
Mhm.
all are paying high taxes. Now, what's really key is this partnership. And so my approach to the district was not, why don't we have that? Like, why are you not applying for this? I said, I recognize that you have enough on your plate. You're dealing with a pandemic. You're trying to figure out return to school and this is not, you're trying to manage what you have, much less add a new element. I said, what if? right? I manage this. What if I create a group of volunteer advocates, I work on it, I get some of the facts, I move us forward, then present to you. And so that was the approach. That's why it worked, right? Even during the pandemic. And when it got to a point where, we shared some key information of why now is the time to take advantage of this, then, the district was willing to take it on.
Awesome. Well, it is certainly an incredible demonstration of how to make things happen, even in tough times. So I want to ask one final thing to kind of get a sense of where your head's at for the future. So I love this comment from Michael Bungay Stainer. We unlock our greatness by working on the hard thing. As you look around in your professional life, in the community, et cetera, what's the hard thing that we need to work on, you need to work on? Talk about a hard thing that's on your radar at the moment.
So, the pre-K was one, right?
Yeah, no, check.
That I think,
because you're never done. That's my perspective. You're always working on hard things.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's like a specific one. I think just my advice always in everything that we do in our personal professional life is to be like that reason, that rational voice of like, here's what I found in corporate, in my personal life, in my professional life now. I find that people who are in leadership are open to hearing ideas, creative ideas from the community and their stakeholders, right? As long as it's delivered in a way that's constructive, right? Because guess what? When you bring up some creative ideas, everyone wins, right? And so I think I would just challenge, the hard thing to do would be like, instead of, sitting on the sidelines and complain, and it is easy to sit behind screens and type comments and, say some harsh things, really think about how can I contribute, right? Let's not just be consumerism. And I'm not talking about materialistic, but even from ideas and thoughts and energy, right? Emotional labor, as we call it. Like, let's be part of the contributors. Let's be part of the solution and really put forth the energy needed to come up with solutions for anything around you. Like anything around you, come up, be part of the solution.
Yeah, oh, I totally love that. And that's a great way to kind of wrap up our time together. You're so right. This is maybe the biggest time in history that we'll be a part of anyway, where there's sort of a call to action to be active, to be participating, as opposed to sort of letting things happen. Big things can be done. Your story about the pre-K program is such an excellent example of it. And if you hadn't asked that question, no, probably would have gone nowhere. So I love that as a point of inspiration for myself and for anyone else who is watching us in the live stream or the or later on. And we got some nice comments here from Sandra Lewis, who it's nice to have here. So I want to encourage people who are viewing, please connect with Tez. She's here. Obviously, she also has a website where you can kind of connect and get to know her if you're on another platform. It's been amazing to have you, Tez. So valuable. I always learn things. I love being part of things that you're a part of, because I know it's going to be super smart. So thanks for dedicating some time and energy here to talk about your perspective on leveling up and leadership. I hope that we'll have another chance to talk about something else. I know we have a lot we could talk about.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. I think we could have gone much longer.
Yes, we could have.
Much to talk about. But I appreciate being your guest, and I welcome connecting with new folks and adding value to them.
Awesome. Awesome. So folks, it's about renewing, pivoting, thriving 2021. I will be back next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with another expert who will share some wisdom bombs. And I want to wish you a great rest of your day and say thanks, Tez. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.